What video game turned out to be disappointing? Anthem. Great mechanics as far as flight and combat. Map was vast. Literally felt like you were Iron Man. Even better if you were playing with a squad. However, as far as gameplay with the missions, it felt so repetitive. After you beat the campaign you couldn't really do much else. The developers really had a lot of potential have DLC or something to have players come back, they didn't. Everything about the gameplay was fantastic. But there was nothing to do but grind the same few activities for loot after the campaign. And the loot was ultimately what killed it in the end. Even grinding repetitive activities for loot can keep a game going for a bit, but all the loot was totally randomized and broken. You could get the same item and have it be a total turd or amazing. You could get an item tailored to a specific javelin but with perks that were useless for the javelin. Imagine getting a weapon that can only be equipped by a warrior and it boosts wizard stats. And you couldn't even ensure upgrades. The loot was so irritating it drove me to quit a fun game. Yeah, I loved the gameplay, really felt like Iron Man. But the story, and endgame was lacking so much. It would have been amazing if it was an endgame like The Division. The dev walked away after making the loot better than lower, and tried many things. Which really sucks since it was amazingly great to fly around shoot and all. Haven't spent a penny on anything EA related. I pre-ordered Anthem. The hype sucked me up and now my dreams of future games are forever broken. The Last Remnant. I like JRPGs but wow, this one was so bad. Unlikable cast. Confusing combat where you can't choose what you want to do, instead you choose from 5 options and sometimes none of them are good for the turn. Leveling up makes no sense either. Sometimes you learn new skills but one time I didn't save and replayed the same fight and instead I got a stat boost. Worst part is the hard bosses that skip your turn, sometimes going 3 times in a row before you can act. Top it all off with the main character saying the title of the game right before the end of the story. Huh? Thought I was the only one who played that game. Everything felt awesome as a 13-year-old, and I managed, somehow, to complete every quest in the game and unlock the souped-up version of the last boss, the Absolute Conqueror. Which I haven't beaten to this day. Since he is literally impossible to beat without stupid amounts of grinding in a very specific, DLC-only area. That I didn't have. But yeah, very run-of-the-mill as far as JRPGs go, with lots of weird and antiquated mechanics. By the way, learning skills was based on how much you use a particular skill. The BR/battle rank that gets up every time you defeat an enemy only determines the difficulty and stats of the enemies. I remember the best way to grind was to take a very strong monster and just going to town repeating the same skills without killing it, and escaping right at the end so as not to raise the BR. I remember there was that one boss fight that felt like it was supposed to be unwinnable. I don't remember specifics, but I vaguely recall that you had to fight against 2 boss-like enemies and, probably, a squad of small fries. One of those bosses was Jaeger, I think, a black guy with white hair, face tattoo and a huge halberd, and I don't remember another one. Like, I swear to God, my squad was pretty much stronger than average, and I tried using anything and everything at my disposal, and yet I couldn't win that fight no matter what kind of dastardly tactics I came up with. At some point I was, like, screw that. And cheated my way through. After that there was a cutscene with some weird time skip, and I stopped understanding what was happening altogether. And that's how I dropped the game. Up until that point, though, it was a weird experience with mostly horrible cast, but I enjoyed everything else that this game had to offer. Mighty Number 9. I had such high hopes for this game. I remember talking to my other friends who were fans of Mega Man and we were non-stop hyping this game up. The game was so bad, I couldn't finish it. My heart just couldn't take it anymore. That's not even mentioning the shitfest the trailers were. And cringe-worthy. An anime fan on prom night. Everyone point out that line but honestly the whole thing has some heavy fellow kids vibe. Which was a weird line because both Mega Man and Mighty Number 9 used an anime art style. It still puzzles me why they used that line, considering the art style is anime. I still don't get why they used that line. They had no respect for their customers. In fact they disdained them. That explains too much. Hello Neighbor. It was only popular, because YouTubers advertised the alpha and then they completely changed things and broke everything. I never played that game but I remember it being decently popular prior to officially launching. What happened? They completely changed the story that was being teased, and fucked up the art style. Other than that the game has tons of problems such as bugs such as running over a box and being sent 20 feet in the air, and the puzzles being way too confusing. Plus the AI gets triggered very easily and is easy to outrun a lot of times. The early alpha builds, specifically pre-alpha and alpha 1, are more fun than the final game. Damn, that's a shame. There was nothing good in the basement. Also, while art style remained the same, they changed the exploration mechanics. Previously, one of the fun parts was trying to navigate the house while the neighbor's AI would learn your common pathways and block/intercept you. Now it's all overly complex puzzles and the game's shittiest mechanic, platforming. The AI is also broken as hell. I've heard some of the new games aren't too bad though. My last time getting a pre-order. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It really wasn't a horrible game, but a disappointment for the series. Facts, really liked Tomb Raider 2013 and Rise of the Tomb Raider, but Shadow was just so dull. Painfully forgettable story, really linear and hand-holdy level design, the same combat as the previous two games except unlike Rise they improved nothing. Also, I don't know if I was just unlucky, but I experienced so many bugs on the PC version and the game looked kinda weird at times visually with characters looking clay-like. The only thing remotely cool about the game in my opinion were the underwater sections, which I actually thought were done quite well. I remember the story making no sense at all, but I did like how Jonah was a little more involved and also how he called Lara out for not caring about the people that got killed by the natural disaster she created, if I remember correctly. I just finished this a few days ago. The story was not nearly as good as the other two. I felt they kept playing the same crappy bait and switch with Jonah. Limo, he's dead. Nope, perfectly fine, no scratches. Oh, he got kidnapped and is going to die. Nope, walks out of a blown-up oil factory completely unscathed. Over and over. The whole game felt like it was on rails really. You play one area, and unless you missed something of are going for 100%, there was no need to return. 1 and 2 felt more like hubs, where you kept returning and exploring and getting access to new areas in the same place. What sucked was all the tools were bought from a merchant and had no purpose other than finding extra areas. It's definitely a series that started fairly strong and got worse with each entry. The reboot needed more tombs, but it actually did a fairly good job of balancing between being a survival game and a power fantasy. Lara starts on the back foot, she's in way over her head. She has a good survival background from Roth, but she's still against an army of thuggish brutes. Shadow was okay. I thought the story of the Prophet was good, but Laura's own story about relating to her dad kinda chugged. And Rise was just mediocre. They were trying to link it to the original series, but it didn't quite work and it definitely hurt the narrative. Bonus comments. I'm going to shy away from obvious answers. Destiny 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Fallout 76, etc., and say this honest-to-God answer that was a tie between Dead Island and 7 Days to Die. Yes, I love zombies. Dead Island was an absolutely great game. I recently replayed it, but at launch, we all had the trailer in mind. It wasn't that bad. Just difficult and nowhere close to the trailer, while still having many emotional moments. Now on to 7 Days. This game is great. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend it. But it was indeed a victim to overhype, but about average performance. Either way, even the console version, which may or may not be abandoned, is still great. Dead Island was the best and worst game I've ever played at the same time. Co-op was fun because of the absurdity with which one of your teammates would get blown up by something. Still, I played through with 2 friends and I was the only one who picked a talent that allowed me to gain XP faster. Well, all the enemies scaled to my level and it made the game extra hard and my teammates weren't as useful. What about you guys? Do you agree with Reddit's opinion on overhyped game? Or do you guys have your own opinion about game that turned out to be disappointing? Please share it in the comment. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, or I'll steal your bread. Ciao.